Lu Feng worked for a few years as a secret soldier, but after retiring he returned to his hometown and started working as an app driver. All he wanted was a quiet life away from the usual dangers of his old job. The peaceful life doesn't last long because he meets some girls who do everything to get his attention. The story starts with our protagonist Lu Feng. The night is being a little difficult for our boy who works as an app driver and didn't do any rides today. He starts to get sleepy and decides to go back home to rest. Suddenly a girl gets in front of his car, and he has to brake abruptly. The car stops and the girl jumps in. Feng doesn't understand anything and asks what's going on. He complains saying that it's not just any driver, and she has to order the service before getting in. The girl soon puts a knife to his neck and tells him to drive to Zhongluotan. Feng almost relieves himself right there and agrees to take her. He drives at the speed of light to the destination, even committing several traffic imprudences. At that moment the girl asks for his cell phone. The protagonist, thinking he is going to be robbed, starts to say that his phone is state-of-the-art and is all broken. The girl is very angry for being mistaken for a bandit. She demands that he give the cell phone. Soon, Feng obeys. The girl then calls the police and introduces herself as Lu Mei, a student at Zijing School. She tells her that her friend was kidnapped and is being held in an abandoned factory in Zhongluotan City. Our Uber listens carefully to the conversation next door and shouts, asking if she decided to rob him just to get to Zhongluotan. He thought he was going to meet Jesus, and in the end she just wanted a ride. Lu replies that now he knows his identity, so he can stop by school tomorrow to get his reward. Feng's mood changed when he heard the word reward. He smiled and said he was ready to save beautiful women. A few minutes later the two finally arrive in Zhongluotan, near the abandoned factory. Lu seems not to have been able to handle the protagonist's speed and walked away to vomit. Meanwhile our boy was fine, waiting for her to recover. After that they say goodbye and Lu goes towards the factory. The protagonist thought to himself if he should leave a girl alone in this situation. He also reminded her of the reward she had promised to give tomorrow. Suddenly a blonde woman approaches him and offers her night job. She asked if Feng didn't want to eat something today. Our boy immediately refused, saying that he doesn't like spoiled things. The woman replies that this girl who just entered seems to be quite young, so if he wants something fresh, just come tomorrow. The scene changes inside the factory. Lu finds Mimi tied to a chair and with tape in her mouth. She soon approaches trying to save her friend, but obviously it wasn't that easy and Lu realizes that it was a trap. The gang of criminals is happy to see that they captured two right away. Lu quickly takes his fighting position. The leader comments that he likes to see women struggling to survive. Suddenly a knife turns in front of them and the protagonist appears. He introduces himself as Uber and says that his passenger forgot this item in the car. Lu is worried and asks Feng to leave because everyone here is dangerous. At that moment the leader orders his men to finish this driver. A yellow-haired guy is the first to attack. He runs with a bat towards Feng, who quickly disappears before his eyes. The gangster looks from side to side without understanding where the driver hid. Suddenly a voice from above asks if the guy has lost anyone. The gangster sees the protagonist on top of a container and attacks with the bat. Our Uber jumps quickly, already anticipating the scam. The criminals start talking about how fast he is. Feng climbs into another container and says he's a little rusty. He barely ran and already feels like resting. The leader visibly bravo points his finger, asking who he is and why he is interfering in his business. Feng calmly replies that he already said he was a driver and came to return his passenger's item. He winks at Lu, telling her not to forget to give 5 stars. The girls look at him without understanding how someone can make a joke at a time like this. The leader gets tired of our driver's pranks and orders everyone to attack at the same time, so they will have the advantage and there is no way this boy can win. The protagonist runs to the first one in front of him and hits his head on his nose, knocking the guy out immediately. The other gangsters stop for a moment seeing the situation, but Feng passes by them and knocks them down one by one at the speed of light. Not even his trail can be followed. The next minute all the men are on the ground and only the leader is still standing. Lu watches Feng with bright eyes, imagining how amazing he is. Meanwhile the leader calculates that he has no way to keep up with him in his hand and goes for his second strategy. He pulls out a pistol and takes Lu hostage. The girl with wide eyes hears the man say that there is no way the protagonist can be faster than his bullets. Feng replies that he only believes he sees himself with his own eyes. The leader feels offended for not being respected even wielding a gun. Then in a fit of rage he points at Feng and starts shooting. Lu closes his eyes in fear. Our boy just throws the knife towards the man's hand. who is hit and falls to the ground screaming in pain. Feng finds another object and kicks towards the leader. Lu begins to see the protagonist as a great knight who saved the maiden in distress. But when he looks at him, his fantasy ends. At that moment, the police invade the place and begin to arrest the entire criminal gang. Mimi's parents also arrive desperate. The girls cry, saying that everything is fine. Our boy is handcuffed and taken to talk to the head of the investigation. The remaining police officers comment on how this boy is involved in big problems since he had to talk to the captain. The scene changes to the protagonist and the sheriff. Surprisingly, the sheriff refers to Feng as boss and says he's happy to see him again. He then asks what the boy is doing here. Feng replies that he only went out to exercise, then comments to the captain that the police are doing a great job. He then begins to take off the handcuffs without any effort. The captain thanks him for the compliments and adds that it was thanks to the boss who taught him very well. The protagonist says not to call him boss because he is now just a driver. After that, the two say goodbye. A little later that night, Feng returned to his hotel room. He had just taken a shower and dried his hair with the towel. The protagonist looks at a frame with someone's picture and says that the person doesn't need to worry because he is already enrolled as a student in the Zijing school. He assures that he will not break his promise. The next day at the Zijing school, a teacher introduces Feng to the rest of the students. While the girls melt for the beauty of the protagonist, the guys get angry and envious. Mimi and Lu soon recognize the driver who saved them last night. At that moment, two gangsters who are sitting close to comment that it is necessary to embarrass this newbie because he is thinking a lot. One of them suggests increasing the protection rate. He soon has an idea and asks his friend to observe. In the next moment, the guy puts his foot for the protagonist to bump and fall, but Feng is extremely attentive, and when he sees the guy's foot there, he steps with all his strength. This delinquent named Liao Qianquan screams in pain while holding his precious foot. The teacher hears a noise and asks what happened. Qianquan replies that it was nothing. The protagonist keeps walking and chooses a table near a guy named Derek Tang. The student advises him not to mess with this bully. The protagonist asks, why? Derek replies that Qianquan is from the Sky Club, a group of gangsters that charges fees of protection to the students not to hit them. Feng's eyes shine when he hears the word fee. If there is one thing this boy loves is money. He thinks very happily that this club must have a lot of money. A little later the class ends and everyone prepares for the break. Feng prefers to stay in the room of his book, while his friend takes the opportunity to take a nap. Suddenly the same guy from before appears who had his foot injured by the protagonist. Liao Qianquan kicks a nearby table, and by his face you can already understand the bad intention. He calls the protagonist a newbie and says that the boy doesn't seem to know the rules of the place. His friend next door comments that everyone needs to pay $2,000 in protection fees, otherwise he won't have good days ahead. The other students in the class talk to each other saying that the fee has already started for the newbie. At that moment Derek enters the conversation. He says that the Sky Club fee is $1,000, so they can't double the price. Qianquan puts his arm around Derek's neck and asks menacingly what he knows about his gang. The man then reports that the protagonist stepped on his toes and now he must pay. At that moment another figure enters the scene. Mimi demands that Qianquan stop threatening others. The guy asks since when the princess of the Jing family learned to defend others. It's not like she was bothered by her gang's business. The other students start saying that they didn't expect to see Jing Mei defend the rookie. The protagonist finally opens his mouth and starts telling the group of gangsters that knowledge is the true power, but they will only understand when they study hard like him. That way his parents won't be embarrassed at home. Qianquan starts laughing uncontrollably. His friend doesn't have much patience and says that since the protagonist doesn't want to pay, they will solve it with the punch. At that moment the two go towards Feng with their fists, but the protagonist just closes the book and uses it as a weapon to hit them both in the face. After doing so he says that he had warned before that knowledge is power. The gangsters fall to the ground and get scared. Feng says that they wasted his energy, so they were the ones who should pay. The protagonist continues saying that he knows that later the two will crawl and complain to their superiors about what happened here. Suddenly he approaches the guys with a terrifying face and asks them to pass on a message to the superior of the Sky Club. Today after school they must deliver all the protection fees to him, not one coin less. The gangsters trembled with fear and agreed to pass on the information. The rest of the students were open-mouthed by this scene. After all, the protagonist was going to charge a fee from the club. Derek observed the conversation and thought to himself that this is not good. Meanwhile the girls stood there admiring the bravery of the protagonist. At that moment a teacher arrives and sees two students kneeling. She asks what is happening. The gangsters with fear just say that it is no big deal. Fong gets a landscape face. The teacher decides to introduce herself to the new student. She says that she is the English teacher and her name is Jun Ling Meng. After that the class starts. The protagonist begins to feel sleepy and bored with this class. Teacher Jun prepares to ask the students a question. Upon hearing this they tremble with fear and ask internally not to be chosen. Jun looks at the room and observes the protagonist sleeping. This makes her very angry. The students say that this newbie is very crazy. Everyone knows how angry the teacher is. In the last class she sent a student home crying. The guy who fought with the protagonist before celebrates that the boy will be punished. At that moment the teacher goes towards Fong, who is taking a comfortable nap. She tries to hit him with a book, but the boy's body instinctively moves away and she doesn't hit it. This starts to make the teacher even angrier. She tries again to hit him, but for some reason the protagonist's body deflects all the sometimes. Even the students are impressed. The teacher gives up hitting the notebook and tries to kick the student, but ends up hitting the knee on the chair. She screams in pain and the protagonist wakes up asking what happened, as if he didn't know. June decides to embarrass the boy. She starts to reprimand his actions in English, complaining mainly about sleeping in class. The teacher believes that the protagonist is not good at speaking another language, but Fong surprisingly responds in English. He apologizes for sleeping and says that he did it because he was too tired. June replies that this does not justify sleeping in class and he will have to leave if he continues like this. It happens that the teacher confuses a word and the sentence is different. The protagonist asks if she is telling him to go to the widow's house. The teacher starts to lose her patience and they get into an argument in English, but she is soon defeated because the protagonist has a perfect accent. The students realize the situation and ask how June lost. It was something totally new to them. The teacher is embarrassed by the defeat and says that this time she will let it go. This scene makes the students even more in love at last. They even say that they want to have a child with him. Meanwhile the students get angrier and angrier that a newbie is attracting attention. Fong thinks to himself that his perfect English is due to the years of experiences he had working abroad. A student complains to the teacher that the protagonist should be expelled, but he is the one who ends up being. A little later the students are released to go home. Several aggressive footsteps are heard outside. Derek asks Fong to go home soon. Probably the gang will come after him and they will be outnumbered. The protagonist replies that he doesn't have to worry. Suddenly Derek is grabbed by the collar of his blouse. A bald guy approached and asks Fong if he is the rookie who intends to extort his club. The protagonist quickly bursts out laughing. He asks if the bald man is the leader of the club. This is a little different from what Fong imagined. In addition, he even calls the leader a dwarf. The leader Huang gives a scary smile while saying that the protagonist is screwed. Fong assumes that he will fight all of them, but asks that Derek be released because he has nothing to do with it. Huang denies it and one of the members says that Derek was responsible for the humiliation they went through earlier. The boss then orders all his men to attack. Fong quickly grabs the leader by the neck and starts to squeeze. The whole gang stops advancing. The man begins to turn purple without air and asks to be released. The protagonist jokes telling him to repeat it because he didn't understand it properly. The members see this scene and decide not to get too close. They release Derek in exchange for the leader. But the protagonist takes advantage of the situation and asks his friend to retaliate all the punches he has ever received from Huang. Derek remembers all the humiliation he went through at the hand of the Sky Club. At that moment Fong holds the leader while Derek starts to beat him. The members are horrified seeing the boss get beaten. Minutes later Derek finished beating Huang, who now has a deformed face. He thanks the protagonist for the opportunity and says that from today on he will follow him. Fong drops Huang on the ground and points to his friend saying that he was the one who hit the leader, so the members already know who to look for if they want to retaliate the attack. Derek is surprised by his colleague's lines, but Fong replies that it is a joke. He approaches the leader and asks where the money of the students they stole is. He demands to receive everything or he will throw the leader out of the window. Huang despairs and orders his men to hand over all the money. The protagonist receives everything and asks Derek to return it to the students who paid the fee. Huang asks if he can be released now that he has returned the money. Fong replies that he does not and starts dragging the man to the window. The leader yells asking to let him go, but the next moment the protagonist throws Huang out of the window. People get scared and start to scream that they have a murderous student. Everyone runs in fear of being next. Derek approaches and asks why he did it. Fong replies that Huang is still alive. The classmate looks out the window and sees that the leader fell into a garbage Can all dirty, at least he's alive. Fong smiles scarily and Derek says that he is a demon. After that the protagonist leaves the school building and goes home, but on the way he finds some guards looking for him. The men ask the boy to get into the car and he obeys. Inside, a gentleman asks if Fong knows him. The protagonist replies excitedly that he is Zheng, a very famous businessman and Mimi's father, a man who will probably pay for him saving his daughter yesterday. Fong still says that he is not so greedy and will be satisfied with a few million. Zheng asks with a serious expression why Fong is chasing his daughter. The boy asks if the man is suggesting that he is the kidnapper. Jing says that the protagonist was just a driver when he saved his daughter, but the next day he already enrolled in the same school and now studies in the same class as Mimi. Fong jokes saying that it really looks suspicious, but it could be fate wanting him to marry Mimi. So Jing will be his father-in-law and he will be rich until the end of his life. The man is annoyed by this insolence. Fong replies that it really had nothing to do with the attack. Zheng was going to say something when suddenly the protagonist threw him out of the car. The guards look back trying to understand what happened. The next moment a truck hits their car and an explosion happens. Everyone manages to escape before the fire starts. No one was seriously hurt. The guards run up to the boss asking if he is okay and Zheng confirms. The protagonist approaches and says that there was no one in the truck. He asks if Jing still thinks that it might be him behind Mimi's kidnapping. Jing thinks for a moment and realizes that it is impossible for it to be Fong, simply because he decided to come to school at the last minute, so there was no way for the boy to prepare an attack like this. Anyway, the person who prepared this is also behind the attack on Mimi. The man wonders who it could be. The protagonist starts to leave and tells Jing to investigate the situation. The man yells at his guards, asking them to send someone to protect his daughter. Meanwhile, Zheng decides to go to the hospital because he thinks he broke a rib. The scene changes to later. The night came and Fong decided to eat at one of those street stalls. The owner politely asked what he wanted to order. Fong asked for a bowl of egg noodles. A moment later the food arrives. The protagonist thinks to himself that the money he earned working as a driver is not enough. It is only enough to pay for school fees. He can barely afford his own meals now. In addition, he still has to save money for a hotel room. Life is not very easy for the boy. He starts eating when he suddenly hears a noise. The guy at the next table throws the food on the floor. The owner asks what happened and he replies that there was a cockroach on his plate. Woman says that it is impossible to have something like that in your food. He starts to get angry asking if he is being called a liar. The other gangster in the purple blouse says he wants at least $20,000 so as not to call the police. The one in the white blouse says he can reduce the amount to $10,000 if she spends the night with them. The woman despairs and says she will call the police. The gangsters start to destroy the whole place, throwing the tables and chairs on the floor. One of them asks if the owner is threatening the members of the Black Fox gang. The customers start to run away when they hear the name of the gang. Everyone knows that this group is known for the bad reputation of causing terror wherever it goes. They don't even feel sorry for the small owners. The gangster in the white blouse says that there is no way for the owner to prove that he did not eat the cockroach, so it is better that she pays the amount if she does not want to be sued. At this moment the protagonist joins the conversation and offers a simple option to solve the problem. The guy just vomits and puts the cockroach out. The tyrant obviously doesn't like the proposal and threatens the protagonist, asking if he doesn't want to live anymore, then said that the boy shouldn't meddle in his business. Fong replies with a scary face that is only giving a suggestion. When he vomits, the truth will appear. The gangster replies embarrassed that he won't do it because he can't vomit. Fong decides to help the poor man. He goes towards the gangster at lightning speed and lands a precise punch in his stomach. The next moment the man vomits everything he ate that day. Obviously no cockroaches appeared, making it clear that the gangster was lying. Fong decides to humiliate this guy even more and starts rubbing his face in that mess. People comment on how brave the protagonist is. The second delinquent decides to attack him with a chair, but Fong kicks a bottle in his direction and he ends up slipping, falling on his face in his companion's vomit. The protagonist climbs on top of the two's heads so that they regret their mistakes. The people around say that this guy is crazy to mess with the Black Fox gang. The gangsters are finally released and they flee the scene. The owner approaches thanking the protagonist for saving her. Fong replies that it's nothing. The woman decides to thank him by returning her money. She says that she doesn't have to pay for today's food. The protagonist is very happy since he was trying to spend as little as possible. Now his goal is to find a hotel room that is cheap. He goes to a nearby pole and sees the ad for a room. The woman asks if he needs to stay somewhere and the protagonist agrees. She then says that it's a great coincidence, this is your ad and a tenant just left your house, so she can get him a room. Fong is happy and the two go to the apartment. Minutes later the protagonist enters the place and observes that it is extremely large. The owner reveals that the house was rented to two girls, but one of them has already left. Fong replies that he understands and asks how much the rent will be. The owner replies that the one who usually rents the apartment is her husband and he is away. That's why the protagonist can talk about the values with him later. After that the owner introduces herself as Lan and says goodbye saying that she will let him rest. Fong thanks him and decides to take a shower. The scene changes to the parking lot of the building where the protagonist is staying. A woman in a blue dress gets out of the car. She complains that she stinks of cigarettes and decides to take a shower as soon as she gets home. At that moment she enters the apartment and goes towards the bathroom. As soon as she opens the door she has a big surprise. She sees the protagonist taking a shower totally naked. Just like he came into the world, the two get a fright. Miss June closes the door immediately and asks what he is doing here. A little later the teacher calls the landlady. The woman explains that she thought the apartment was empty. She says she will go to them to solve this problem and hangs up the call. The protagonist apologizes and says that Miss Lan did not do it on purpose. He decides to leave since the teacher rented the apartment first, but June asks him to wait. Suddenly the protagonist starts hugging her legs and begs to stay with her. He says he has nowhere to go. Teacher June gets scared and asks him to let go of his legs. The woman is embarrassed and says he needs to do something if he wants to stay here, then explains what it is. The protagonist asks surprised if he will have to participate in the national English-speaking competition. The teacher says that he will have to participate and win. The competition will be held in a month. Fong jokingly says that he thought he would have to massage her all day. June gets angry and reminds that no one should know about their relationship. If someone finds out which student is the teacher is living together, it can be very dangerous for both. The protagonist agrees and asks what they will say to the owner. A little later Lan arrives at the apartment. The protagonist and the teacher fake a hug. They decide to lie saying that they are cousins. Lan starts laughing and says that she was worried thinking that she rented the house to two unknown people, but she is happy that they are from the same family. Otherwise she wouldn't know what to say. Now that everything is fine the owner decides to invite them to dinner at her house any day. June totally refuses the offer, but the protagonist confirms that they will go. The teacher does not like that he takes charge of the situation, but we know that the protagonist does not refuse any free food. After that the owner says goodbye and they are left alone. Fong goes to his room to rest. The scene changes to a luxurious mansion. Huang asks his brother for help and says that he was beaten at school. The brother asks if he understood correctly that Huang was thrown into the trash can by a rookie and a fearful boy named Derek. Huang confirms. The next day at school, Mimi and Lu are talking about Fong. Lu says that her friend is in love. Mimi angrily replies that it's not that, she just wants to invite Fong to her birthday party. Lu then convinces her friend to deliver the invitation. Mimi plucks up the courage and approaches the protagonist. She makes the invitation very embarrassed. Fong gives a smile and replies that he will definitely go to his birthday. The girl is glad she wasn't rejected. She also says that her father really wants him to go. The students start talking about that the most coveted girl in school is inviting the newbie to her birthday party. Someone says they are jealous of this boy. He arrived a short time ago and has already gotten the attention of the school beauty. Suddenly one of the guys he was beaten up yesterday approaches the protagonist. He happily says that the principal is calling Fong in the room. Derek is already there waiting for him. The protagonist arrives in the dean's office and realizes that his name is also Huang. He enters and soon sees Derek striking a pose in the corner of the room. The dean asks Fong to stop playing and observe his punishment. The man says that Derek and Fong need to write a 5,000-word self-criticism report where they should apologize to their colleague Huang. This is the punishment file. The protagonist asks the dean what he is from Huang, since they both have the same last name. The dean asks what the boy is trying to suggest. He says that the protagonist would be imprisoned if it weren't for his uncle Jing. After all, he tried to murder a student, so he should be thankful that the punishment is just that. Fong thinks about Jing and realizes that the man came to relieve his problem. Now everyone thinks he is his uncle. Anyway, he should thank him for this help later. After that, Fong calls his friend to come back to the room. Meanwhile, the director gets angry. He finds it a lack of respect for the two boys to simply turn their backs on him. Derek tells the protagonist that he is right. The dean really is Huang's uncle. the protagonist realizes that his friend has a grudge against the surname Huang. He asks if the boy has problems with this family. Derek admits that he is, but says that they are very powerful and it is good is out of his way. Feng asks who is more powerful, the Huang family or the Jing family. Derek replies that it is obviously the Jing family. The protagonist is happy to hear this. The friend asks if Lord Jing is really his uncle. The two talk and are observed by the members of the Sky Club. The guys complain about the fact that the protagonist and his friend have not received any punishment. At the end of the afternoon classes are over, the students start to leave. Derek invites the protagonist to his house. He says that he is very good at cooking. The protagonist would never be able to refuse free food, so he agrees to go with him. Suddenly the two are stopped by a group of gangsters. Huang introduces Ma Zhen, his brother's right-hand man who is here to destroy them. Derek grits his teeth seeing Huang and Zhen in front of him. The protagonist questions if his friend knows this guy accompanied by Huang. Derek replies that he knows the whole family. Huang's father named Hong is responsible for his mother's death and also ordered men to break his father's leg. Huang has a brother named Tao. This brother has a gang outside the school called Black Fox who causes a lot of mess, and the guy named Zhen is Tao's right-hand man. He's probably here for what they did to Huang. The protagonist thanks him for the summary. Huang starts laughing and says that his parents deserve what happened to them. Derek gets angry when he sees this idiot talking like that about his family. The protagonist feels the pain in Derek's words when talking about this family, so he decides to finish them off. Huang starts to mock saying that today Zhen will break his leg. He wishes Derek good luck and says that he will spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. The protagonist grabs Huang by the neck again and asks him to repeat what he just said. People see this and comment that Huang is as helpless as a dog. The members of the Sky Club try to help the boss. One of them rushes to hit the protagonist with a bat, but Feng defends himself with Huang's body. The guy ends up being hit by a member of his own team. Feng uses Huang to take down the attacker. Zhen approaches seeing the situation and runs towards the protagonist, who still holds the boss in his hand. The guy tries to land a punch and Derek screams worriedly. Feng had already predicted this attack and quickly defends himself, hitting the enemy's underparts. Zhen falls to the ground screaming in pain after being hit in his weak point. People begin to see Feng as the demon himself. He laughs and says that these balls need to be changed. Zhen remains on the ground screaming in pain. The protagonist says that the Black Fox gang should be called Black Kitten. They are all equally failures. Zhen gets up with a knife in his hand and says that he will send him to hell. The protagonist wastes no time and hit Huang's head on Zhen's head. The shock is great and Feng manages to take the knife from the enemy. Then he makes some quick movements with his hands. Zhen closes his eyes imagining the worst. He looks around when he doesn't feel any pain and sees that his clothes have been cut. The guy feels embarrassed with everyone seeing his underwear from the heart. The protagonist throws a knife between his legs and warns that he doesn't want to see any member of the Black Fox gang in front of him again. Otherwise he won't be sorry to destroy everyone. The gang starts running to save themselves and Huang is dragged. Derek says that the protagonist was amazing, but now he is worried because he offended the Huang family and the Black Fox gang. Feng replies that he has no reason to be afraid. He also has a powerful person protecting his back, after which he hugs Derek and says that he is hungry. A few hours later the friends arrive in Derek's neighborhood. The protagonist observes that the place seems abandoned. In addition, the smell of alcohol is very strong. They enter the house and Derek goes to his father, who is sleeping on the couch. He begins to cover his father with a sheet and says that the man drinks every day, but he always leaves the house organized. The protagonist's attention is directed to a nearby frame with a photo of several soldiers. He notes that the man was once in the army, then asks Derek to better explain the grudge he has against the Huang family. The friend takes Feng outside and asks if he sees that construction site. A few years ago they lived there, but they were expelled by the owner. One day there was widespread confusion and many people were eliminated. The protagonist asks if his mother was one of them. The boy confirms with tears in his eyes. That same night his father was also beaten and one of his legs was fractured. All the residents saw what happened, but were silenced by money. Feng asks if the Huang family was responsible. Derek confirms. He says that Hong and his eldest son were responsible for the attack. At that moment a voice calls the boys. Derek realizes that his father has woken up. Feng greets Mr. Tang, then says he wants to drink a beer with him and asks his friend to go get it. Derek immediately agrees and leaves. Feng turns to Tang and says that he came here for a reason. Suddenly he takes off his coat and invites the old man to a fight. Tang puts his hand on his face laughing and asks if he's joking. the guy says he doesn't have the 100% movement of one leg, so he can't fight him, but as soon as Derek comes back they can drink something together. After that, Tang lies down and decides to rest. Fong calls the man an old member of the 17th Squad of the Sharp Knife. The next moment he asks where his dignity as an ex-military man lies. Tang is surprised to have his identity revealed. He accepts the fight. After some time Derek comes back and sees the state of the two. For some reason they seem happy. Derek notes that his father hasn't laughed like this in a long time. Tang replies that Fong was once in the army and they have a lot in common. The father asks his son to prepare something for everyone to eat together, then turns to the protagonist and says that nowadays the military is better than before. The boy replies that not so much. The man asks if he is also from the Sharp Knife Squad. Fong replies no, he is from the Master Team. The man was surprised by this statement. He remembers that the Sharp Knife Squad recruits only the best of the best. Each member can challenge multiple enemies at the same time, but Fong is from the Master Team, which has all the best masters from different areas. The protagonist says that he was only there for a few months. Tang thinks this is crazy. He almost didn't join the Sharp Knife Squad, but Fong was in the Master Team for several months. That means he is very good. The boy prefers not to brag. The truth is that Fong was in more advanced squads, but he preferred to say that he was at the master level so as not to scare the old man. At that moment he changes the subject and says that Derek told him about the problem they had with the Huang family. Fong says that Tang should not be a coward. Those people must be punished. Tang sadly replies that he failed his son and his wife. He has tried all options to harm the Huang family, but nothing has ever come of it. That's what happens when he tries to deal with someone more powerful than you. The protagonist says that he also has problems with that family, then they can team up to defeat them. Tang asks surprised if Fong has any way to destroy these people. The boy replies yes, but strength alone is not enough. First you need to find solid evidence, so they won't be able to escape. The protagonist continues to explain the plan and says he will leave this mission to Tang. The man must get the evidence and after that he will start the hunt. Tang agrees to investigate the evidence. There are many things about this family and it is easy to find the evidence. The man even says that the protagonist is very different and trusts him. Derek listens to the conversation of the two behind a wall. A little later in the evening it arrives and Fong waits for the bus. Suddenly a car approaches. The protagonist recognizes Mr. Zheng and asks why he is being chased. Fong notices that the old man always appears looking for him. Zheng asks him to get into the car. The boy obeyed. The protagonist says that the two have been meeting a lot in the last few days, then asks if Zheng is not afraid of people thinking he has an illegitimate child. The man replies that this time he came to thank him for saving his daughter and ask for a favor. He wants Fong to be Mimi's bodyguard. The protagonist replies that he is just a high school student. He doesn't have time to spend with his daughter all day. Zheng says that he only needs him on Mimi's birthday. The man reveals that he found out who is responsible for the kidnapping and wants to get rid of them, but he needs to be very careful. The man also reveals that Mimi doesn't like it when he hires a bodyguard. That's why he decided to ask Fong for help. He's the only one who can do it that now and it wouldn't be suspicious for the girl. After all, she was the one who invited him. At that moment the man pulls an envelope from his suit and says that Fong won't work for free. The protagonist's eyes widen with joy. Money is all he needs. The boy soon changes his tone of voice and accepts to be Mimi's bodyguard. He received $10,000 to protect the girl for a single day. It is impossible to refuse this offer. The man thanked him and kicked him out of the car. The protagonist found it a little inhumane, but held the envelope with all the happiness of his heart. $10,000 was enough to cover his income for a few months. A little later the protagonist returns home and sees Miss June wearing a different outfit. He says he didn't know the teacher cosplayed. She calls him stupid and says that this outfit is from Chinese culture. The protagonist notices 2 cups of tea and decides to drink one. June says it's rude to drink without asking first. But Fong says he has 2 cups and she wasn't going to drink them both, which means she prepared one especially for him. The woman is embarrassed because he was right. Fong smells it and says that this tea is first class. He drinks it and says that the tea is at the wrong temperature. The boy asks if she was just pretending to make tea. June gets angry and says that he won't drink it anymore. She sadly says that she likes tea, but she doesn't know how to make it, so she was trying to learn by herself. The protagonist apologizes for being a little rude. He says that he doesn't need talent to make tea. It's just done with love. Fong decides to prepare a tea for her. and prove his point, he starts to move all the items and explains that the ideal is to put good feelings. Fong prepares the tea quickly and asks her to try it. The girl widens her eyes when she sees this speed and praises her talent. The protagonist replies that it is not talent, the ideal is to make tea calmly, but it seems that June is agitated. She needs to be calm. The teacher is scared by the way Fong can read her thoughts. She confesses that she has something worrying her, but she doesn't want to talk about it with a student. The protagonist replies that he also doesn't want to hear about the problem of others and starts to leave. He wishes him good night. June asks him to wait and says he needs a favor. The woman gets up and asks if he can be her boyfriend tomorrow night. The scene changes to the protagonist running in the middle of the night. He gets tired and decides to stop for a moment. That's when he remembers the conversation he had with the teacher. Fong replied that he couldn't be her boyfriend. It was a little inappropriate to do that with a student. The woman asked him not to misunderstand. Tomorrow she will have to see a man she doesn't want. The scene returns to the current moment. Fong takes a deep breath saying that this is too cliché. Suddenly he hears a scream. A woman starts asking for help saying that her son is being kidnapped. One of the bandits beats her, while the other runs with the baby. Fong goes towards the sound. He runs at absurd speed and jumps over a river. A guy who was nearby comments that he just saw a guy jump 10 meters. The old man looks scared. Meanwhile, the kidnappers start to flee to the car. Suddenly the protagonist arrives and sees one of the bandits. He quickly knocks the bald man down with a punch. The other kidnapper holds a knife near the baby and asks who he is. Fong stares at the man with a deadly look. The driver orders the companion to come to the car right away. At that moment the protagonist goes towards the driver and hits the car with all his strength. The guy suffers the impact and coughs red liquid. The kidnappers are beaten fiercely. The last one left is the one who stole the baby. He kneels down asking not to be beaten. Some time goes by and those two guys from before talk to the baby's mother. She said that her son was kidnapped, but then a guy came and beat up the kidnappers. Then he came and gave his baby back. The man asks the old man what he thinks of it. The old man named June replies that it can only be who they are thinking. That boy is the only one capable of doing so much damage. The next day, Derek asks Fong what he said to his father. The boy happily comments that his father has stopped drinking and is exercising. The protagonist replies that his friend should thank him by paying for dinner. Derek laughs in agreement. The teacher calls the attention of the two because they are disrupting his class. The protagonist winks at her. June is embarrassed by the red cheeks. Fong asks his friend if he thinks June has too many suitors. Derek asks if he is liking the teacher. The boy confesses that Fong will have to get in line to have any chance. The protagonist looks at the teacher thinking that she is just using him, but he decides to take some advantage of it. Night comes. The protagonist receives a gift from the teacher. She bought a suit for him to wear today. 10 minutes pass and Fong is ready. He comments that it was a good thing for the teacher to see him without clothes. She even managed to buy a suit perfectly in his size. The embarrassed woman asks him to shut up. June thought he was very handsome, but couldn't confess. She asked Fong to remember the plan. He will introduce himself as a Harvard-educated businessman. The protagonist replies that he already understands and sits down to wait for her to change clothes. A few hours later the woman comes back tidy. Fong waited so long that he even slept on the couch. He wakes up and looks at the beauty in front of him. June apologizes for the delay. She says that it took her a long time to do her makeup. After that the two go down to the parking lot. The protagonist decides to call a taxi, but the woman says there is no need. She says that Fong is now a successful businessman with an annual salary of $1 million, so there is no way they can get there by taxi. At that moment she takes Fong to a red sports car and asks if he can drive. He is very happy and replies that he will take her wherever he wants. The two get in the car and the protagonist asks Miss June if he should pretend surprise. The woman reminds him that he should not call her Miss June, since they now have a relationship. Fong asks what he should call her. June asks to call by Meng's name. The protagonist agrees and puts the pedal to the metal. He asks Meng who they are going to meet. The teacher replies that it is a fiancé that her parents found for her, just a rich playboy. Fong says that he will abandon her if this rich guy offers him $10 million. She replies that if he does that, his body will not even be found. The protagonist laughs and continues to drive. A little later they arrive at their destination. The protagonist looks at a luxurious ship in front of him. He comments to the teacher that this groom really is rich. Meng replies that it is actually rented. They go towards the ship when two men appear. The guys seem desperate for Meng's delay. One of them says that the girl took too long and her fiancé is waiting on the third floor. At that moment they notice the protagonist and ask who he is. Meng replies that this is her boyfriend, which leaves the guys completely confused. The teacher moves on. The protagonist says that he already knows that his fiancée is from the Sidhu family. They are very influential in the capital. Now he will definitely annoy them. Meng is surprised that Feng knows his fiancée's family. Suddenly they hear a voice. The groom holds a bouquet of flowers and runs towards Meng. The girl thanks him, but says he doesn't like flowers. Sidhu then throws the bouquet away and says he's going to buy something much bigger. The man questions why Meng left the capital and came to hide in such a tiny place. He says it took him a long time to find her. I think it's pretty obvious that she didn't want to be found. The girl thinks for a while and kindly replies that she likes this place. Sidhu says he made a special dinner for her. However, the girl refuses. The protagonist enters the conversation and says that she shouldn't refuse something like that. Meng replies that it's okay. Sidhu finally notices the boy and asks why he's holding her hand. The guy starts yelling at the boys' security guards that there is a suspect on the ship. Meng tells him not to treat his boyfriend like that. Sidhu doesn't take the situation well. He points to Feng while asking who he thinks he is to go out with his fiancée. The protagonist squeezes the guy's finger and says that he better take back what he said. Otherwise it can leave his brother Ming with an incomplete body. The guy looks terrified and asks how Feng knows he has a brother. The protagonist replies that the salesman near his building told him. Sidhu asks who is this salesman. Feng replies that it doesn't matter and says that he should apologize. The guy quickly obeys, but gets stressed with Feng holding his finger. The protagonist jokingly says that Sidhu must obey him because he is his father. The guy gets full of confusion in his head. Suddenly someone approaches and says that Sidhu should show more respect. He wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for his brother. Meng recognizes the man and runs towards him, calling him grandfather. The protagonist looks expressionlessly at this old man. Coincidentally, this old man is the same one who appeared on that day of the kidnapping looking for the protagonist. It seems that they have known each other for some time. Mr. Jun says that he came here to see his granddaughter, but he is surprised to find Feng too. Meng approaches the grandfather and asks if they already know each other. Jun replies that he and Feng are more than acquaintances. The man tells the boy that he has been looking for him for 2 years, since they parted on the cliff of the broken sky. The protagonist seethes with anger and asks why he is looking for him. They should be looking for the wrong soul under the cliff. Mr. Jun replies that there is no soul there. Her team has searched dozens of times and they couldn't find her corpse. Meng overhears this conversation and is totally confused. The protagonist decides to leave and apologizes to Meng for this. She tries to ask him to stay. Suddenly Mr. Jun shouts that after his departure, the people of the Xianyuan sect have lost faith and integrity. All the top men resign their positions. Feng knew the old man's intention when he said this and replied that anyway everyone would continue their lives without him, besides that he had a new goal and was a simple high school student. At that moment one of the security guards got in Feng's way and asked him to listen to Mr. Jun. The protagonist replies that he doesn't feel like fighting today. The man felt offended by the way the protagonist seemed to be superior, so he decided to repeat what he said earlier and put his hand on his shoulder, but Feng lost his patience and attacked him, hitting his elbow in his stomach. The guy ended up falling with all his strength on the wall. Meng asks them to stop. The security guard stood up and tried to punch Feng, but the boy just went under his arm. The security guard gives up because he is not able to fight someone like that. He apologized to Mr. Jun for that. The old man replies that he has no reason to apologize. Feng is number 1 in all kinds of fight rankings. His nickname was Demon King. A little later, Feng went to a party that was happening on the ship. He remembers something that happened several years ago when he saved a girl from a fire. In addition to the fire, they were chased by a large number of wild dogs. The two ran trying to escape and arrived at the tip of the cliff. There was no way out. The girl then let go of Feng's hand and jumped. The protagonist never understood why she did that, but felt guilty for not saving her. Back to the current moment, the boy was very angry to find this old man and have to remember one of the most difficult moments of his life. While thinking, suddenly a girl bumped into him, spilling all the drink in his pants. She began to apologize, saying that it was an accident. The protagonist was still kind of angry, but then improved his expression and replied that it was okay. The girl acts strangely as if she is being chased. She looks at back and then starts to hide, exactly under the table where the protagonist was drinking. Feng is kind of embarrassed because this angle is not very favorable. He even asked if she didn't want to at least change a number before. The girl tried to quickly explain that she was being chased. Suddenly a man with a bandage on his eye shouted to his security guards that the girl had run away. He says that everyone will pay dearly if this girl is not found. The men have been looking for a long time and have not been able to find her, so they give up and go look elsewhere, the protagonist warns the girl that she managed to go unnoticed and could already leave the hideout. He begged her to leave because his friend was almost waking up. The woman left and started to apologize for this incident. Fong replied that there was no problem and it was better for her to hurry to run away. The girl obeyed. The protagonist thought about what happened and even imagined for a second that he had met the love of his life. But she was just hiding. Suddenly he hears some screams. The bandits say that they found the girl. At that moment we can see that the girl had some abrasions on her face. She tried to run away but couldn't. There were many subordinates of that guy looking for her. The guy with one eye only tells where they should take her. The girl passes by the protagonist and asks him to call the police. But Fong preferred not to get involved in the matter for now and pretended he didn't even know her. A thug approached him and whispered in his ear that it was better to pretend he didn't see anything. Otherwise he shouldn't blame the Black Fox gang for what will happen. The name of this gang seems to have offended Fong. He suddenly became someone else and started beating up the thug. The truth is that the protagonist was tired of seeing this gang causing trouble and hurting people everywhere. This attack surprised the guy with one eye and the other members. Even the girls stopped to watch the scene. The leader asked the protagonist if he knows where he is and if he knows who owns this bar. One of the customers starts whispering that this was the famous one-eyed dragon. The friend next door asks who he is. The guy says he must be new here and decides to explain. In the Black Fox gang there are 4 leaders, called White Shark, Black Bear, Mad Tiger and One-Eyed Dragon. They are all merciless men who are capable of eliminating anyone. At this moment the One-Eyed Dragon says that he cannot sit idly by when customers create problems in his establishment, so he decided to ask Feng's name. The protagonist replied that his name was Black Cat Delegate and ordered everyone to raise their hands. The thug started to think that Feng was too drunk, so it was better to let him go, but the One-Eyed Dragon only says that they have a reputation. If they let the boy go like that they will lose respect. He then suggested that the protagonist follow him. Feng replied that he wasn't going anywhere. Actually he wanted to take this girl and go to a hotel room with her. The one-eyed guy tried to explain that this woman had just filmed their confidential negotiation. If she didn't return the video it couldn't be released. Suddenly Feng starts to rummage through his pockets. He says he remembers the girl having delivered something like that to him. Hearing this the bandits start to approach and tells him not to move. A look from Feng is enough to make men fear. They can't take any more steps. The protagonist grabs a drink while talking about the Black Fox gang is a loser who only has the courage to deal with women. Even if they have a dominant gang name, they can't hide the fact that they are weak. The people present couldn't believe that an ordinary guy started to offend the Black Fox gang. One of the thugs felt offended and started shouting that the boy should be beaten. Feng, looking a little drunk, challenged the man to try. He soon realized that the alcohol had run out and asked for some more. The one-eyed dragon only began to think that Feng would never dare to annoy them if it wasn't good, but since he messed with the gang, it's better to break something from him, otherwise people will mock his leadership. So he suggested a challenge. The guy said that he was famous for his game of darts. The protagonist could leave with the girl if he could dodge at least one of the darts. Some people comment that this was the secret technique of the one-eyed dragon. Rumors say that he could eliminate the enemy with a dart before the person could notice. At that moment the girl shouted that the protagonist has nothing to do with it. She promises to deliver the video if they let the boy go. After all, he is nothing more than a drunk customer. The protagonist entered the conversation saying that he was ready for the challenge. The one-eyed dragon was ready to start and ordered his enemy to get ready. Everyone was silent, eager to see what was going to happen. Meanwhile Feng started singing a nursery rhyme and staggered left and right. The one-eyed dragon only thinks that this boy should be grateful for having the opportunity to see his abilities. The man remembers that to obtain this ability he had to lose the sight of one of his eyes. Now his dart is faster than bullets and no one can dodge it. The protagonist continued to drink, and at that moment the guy swung the dart with all his might, then made a throw with 3 more darts that he expected to be lethal. He used a secret technique called 3 deadly throws. The girl saw the old man attacking in a treacherous way. The one-eyed dragon only thought he had won. Even if Feng could dodge the first dart, he threw the others. One of them would hit. The protagonist surprisingly defended himself with the cup he was drinking. After making this incredible save he looked at the 4 darts in the cup. The enemies were shocked. The girl was happy that her savior was unharmed even after so many darts. The protagonist says that he won and now they could leave this club. He was ready to spend the night with her. The girl agreed. Suddenly the one-eyed dragon ordered everyone to stay in their places. The guy says that Feng showed to be very strong, how he managed to get all 4 darts he can go, but the girl would have to deliver the recording. The girl sticks out her tongue and says that she will expose all the dirty cases she saw. She still says that she has Feng to protect her and is no longer afraid of anyone. The protagonist realized that they would not be able to leave here without causing great damage. He soon thinks of a way to defeat the leader. At that moment the boy throws a dart hitting the enemy's only good eye. The dragon, who now has no eyes anymore, started screaming in pain. He could no longer see and ordered his allies to destroy this guy. The protagonist and the girl were surrounded. She says that he better run because the enemies are in large numbers. But Feng replies that he has been waiting for this moment all night. Now it's time for the show. The protagonist runs towards the men, who are armed. He knocks down the first one and starts using the opponents to hit each other. The guys are attacked in every way. The rest look at the bodies lying on the ground. Suddenly the protagonist jumps towards them. The one-eyed dragon starts asking if the boy has already been defeated, but the only unharmed man replies that in fact Feng defeated his 30 allies. The one-eyed dragon has no way out. He then admits defeat and tells the protagonist that the boy should not be too happy. After all, he only defeated the weakest of the 4 leaders. The other 3 will come and put an end to him. Feng replies that he doesn't like to be threatened, but as he is tired today he leaves. He thanks him for the information. The girl runs after the protagonist. Before leaving, Feng gave his name, just so they don't confuse him when he goes after him. The one-eyed dragon asks his ally to tell the boss that the girl has run away with the video. After some time the two are finally outside the ship. Feng questions why the girl continues to follow him. Now she is safe. The girl says she wants to introduce herself. Her name is Tsinjing Shu and she is a journalist. The protagonist says that it is no wonder. She must have recorded the Black Fox gang doing some dirty business. Jing replies that that's right, she has evidence and will expose it. The protagonist ends his joy by saying that she won't be able to destroy the gang. It will be difficult to defeat a rich and well-connected organization with some evidence. Feng keeps saying that she better quit her job and leave the city, or she will have to rely on luck. After that, the boy drives away in the car. Jing is annoyed that the protagonist left without leaving any contact numbers. The scene changes to the one-eyed dragon. The boss says it's disappointing and the guy recognizes his mistakes. The man next to him is Tao, Huang's brother, but in the gang he's known as Tiger. He says this is bad for the Black Fox gang. The boss wears a mask so as not to reveal his face. He asks if there is any explanation. The dragon replies that the boy was much better than him. He looked like those kung fu masters. The tiger says that this is no excuse. Now he is missing both eyes. Suddenly another figure enters the scene. The boss recognizes him as a white shark. The man reveals some information. The woman is called Jing and is a journalist, while Luo Feng is a high school student. Recently he has been causing problems with their gang. The tiger says that it is no wonder that Zhen was defeated by him. The guy turns to the boss and borrows some men to deal with it. The great white shark enters the conversation saying that it all started because of the tiger's brother, who teased Feng first and then was so beaten that he relieved himself in his pants. He adds that Huang used the name of the Black Fox gang to threaten him. That's why Feng is after them. The tiger gets angry and asks if the guy wants to be beaten. The great white shark replies that he can come up. The boss asks the guys to stop fighting. He leaves the situation for the tiger to solve, since it was his brother who started it all. The scene changes to the protagonist arriving at the parking lot of the building. He enters his apartment and sees Meng lying down. The girl is still in her party clothes. Feng takes off his coat with the intention of covering Meng. In his view he is being very nice. But the girl wakes up and the vision she has is different. She starts to think that the protagonist was trying to do adult things. The girl starts screaming that he is a shameless one. Minutes later we see a big mark on the protagonist's face. He seriously asks the teacher why she did it. Meng says it was his fault that scared her. Feng says he's going to put some ice and rest. Before leaving he warns that he left the car downstairs. The teacher interrupts him and puts a wet towel on top of the mark. She asks him not to misunderstand because she is only doing this because she feels guilty. In addition, the girl apologizes for what happened today. She did not know that her grandfather was going to be at the party or that they knew each other. Meng also says that her grandfather told him that the protagonist was a type of king who impressed the world. She asks if this is true. Feng questioned if she would give such a strong beating to a king. The girl replied embarrassed that it wasn't because she wanted to. She asks what he came here to do if he is so well known in the capital. The protagonist says that he really is a legend. He can even be called Superman. The teacher says he is serious. Feng replies that he is just a high school student, but she does not believe it. The protagonist then tells her to believe in her grandfather. Meng becomes thoughtful. The next day Feng runs towards Mimi's house. Halfway through he finds a bread shop and decides to buy it, then he keeps running and arrives in front of a huge mansion. A butler appears and says that Master Zheng allowed him to enter freely through the house. The protagonist asks where Mr. Feng is and the butler replied that he left. The man says mentally that it's good for this boy not to try any jokes, especially trying to get into Miss Mimi's room. Suddenly a guy enters the scene. The butler recognizes this guy as Bao Ning. He is one of Mimi's suitors. The butler believes that Bao's arrival will make Feng leave. At that moment the guy says he arrived early to deliver Mimi's gift. He looks at Feng and asks if he is Mrs. Classmate. The fat man says that the protagonist looks poor and asks what gift he intends to give. Feng was humiliated for free. Suddenly Mimi appears and calls for the protagonist. He greets her and calls her Miss. The girl is embarrassed and says he doesn't need to call her that. The fat man tries to get the girl's attention at any cost and says he brought her gift. He shows a luxurious piano. The protagonist also shows what he brought, a loaf of bread. Ning wonders if the guy really had the courage to bring street food. He's sure the girl will hate it. But surprisingly Mimi takes the protagonist's gift and jumps with happiness. Ning and the butler didn't expect this reaction. After some time Mimi goes back to her room. She tells herself that she usually doesn't like to eat street food, but accepted it because it was his, and in the end she really liked the bread. Meanwhile in the living room of the mansion, the fat man introduces himself as Bao Ning and asks if Feng knows him. The protagonist replies yes. His grandfather is Bao Jiaozi and he is his grandson. Ning corrects him by saying that his grandfather is named Bao Yuan. He feels that Feng is trying to pressure him by making fun of his grandfather's name. Butler joins the conversation and says that it is normal that Feng does not know Mr. Bao Yuan. He is one of the 8 elites of the city. All of them are very capable and only people from well-established families know his power. The man continues to say that Ning is a talented grandson, known for his musical talent, especially in playing the piano. People even call him the piano man. Ning brags about the compliments. The protagonist says that piano man doesn't seem like a very elegant title. The butler agrees, saying that he thinks the title man from the musical is more beautiful. Suddenly a girl appears asking what they are doing. The butler recognizes her as Bubu. He says that Mimi hasn't seen her in 10 years. The man starts to climb the stairs saying that Miss is up there. She will be delighted to know that Bubu is here. The fat man looks uncomfortable. He says he didn't know that Mimi had a tomboy friend. Suddenly Bubu swings his foot towards the guy's face. She stops inches away and asks if the fat guy is in any trouble. The protagonist realizes that she is very fast. The girl looks towards Feng and calls him pale-faced. He soon replies that there is no problem. At that moment Mimi goes downstairs and greets her friend. She says that Bubu was her best friend in elementary school, but she went abroad and it's been 10 years since they saw each other. She still says that her friend was much more feminine than she used to. Bubu replies that things have changed since she learned to fight abroad. She even learned that her friend was kidnapped recently, so she decided to be her bodyguard today on her birthday. Mimi is very happy about it. Her father no longer lets her leave the house since the incident, but now with Bubu things can change. She then decided to go to the mall and invited the protagonist to go with them. Bubu reminds her that he is on a motorcycle and has no place for a third person. Feng replies that it's okay, they can go ahead, and he goes after with the fat guy. Ning doesn't like the way the protagonist talks to him. Feng asks if the guy doesn't want to go shopping with Mimi. He replies that of course he does. Minutes later the girls leave the mansion. Towards the mall, Feng gets in the car and asks Ning to always keep behind the girls. The angry guy asks if the protagonist is trying to make him his driver. A little later at the mall, people comment on the group. Some say that the pink-haired girl is very beautiful, while others say that the fat guy is very ugly. Bubu comments that her friend has always been the center of attention. Mimi thanks the compliment and suggests going to the next store. Bubu agrees. Feng and Ning are behind. The fat man complains about being the one to carry the groceries. The protagonist hugs Ning and says that carrying shopping bags for Mimi is much more useful than gifting her a piano. The guy is shocked by this information. Feng continues to say that Mimi is an elegant and rich person since she was young, so if she wanted she could buy the piano. What will impress her is your company, especially if he offers to carry the bags for her. Ning ends up falling for Feng's lies. Suddenly Mimi stops. Her friend asks what happened. She replies that she is hungry. Bubu replies that she is too, and they decide to go to the nearby restaurant. Everyone sits down to eat and Mimi says that it's been a long time since she had fun like This, Bubu says she's as sweet as ice cream. The girl tells her friend that she's starting to think this is a flirtation. She jokingly replies that she's better than these smelly men. Ning asks with her mouth all dirty who she's calling stinky. The protagonist tries to calm the boy down by telling him not to get angry. He whispers that Bubu just wants to outshine them by pleasing Mimi. Fong confesses that he wouldn't mind losing to her. But Ning can't admit defeat. Now is the critical time for him to take action and pay for this meal. Ning says not to underestimate his potential. Paying for a meal is not sincere enough. He decides to buy the whole restaurant for her. Mimi thanks, but says he doesn't like to eat meat that much. The guy gets emotional just that the girl speaks to him. At that moment a waiter passes near their table and pulls a knife from his tray. Bubu notices the action and quickly throws a knife towards the man's head. The protagonist is even faster and interferes in the attack using his fork. The knife and fork end up on the ceiling and the man is unharmed. At that moment the waiter approaches the next table and apologizes for not having brought the utensils earlier. The customer complains saying that he thought he would have to eat with his hand. Bubu asks how Fong managed to block his actions so quickly. The boy just replies that she should think before acting. Otherwise someone might end up getting hurt by her rash actions. Bubu asks who he is. Fong replies that he is a student in the same class as Mimi, but the girl seriously replies that he is not a student. Mimi joins the conversation and says that he was the protagonist who saved her from that kidnapping. Bubu is surprised. Fong says that he will also be Mimi's bodyguard today. The girl is happy with so many people she likes protecting her. A little later the group continues to have fun. They also go to a park and participate in various rides. Mimi ends up feeling like going to the bathroom and her friend accompanies. Bubu enters the bathroom and starts receiving several messages. Someone scolds her, saying that she almost exposed her true identity and revealed the plan. Bubu apologizes and replies that he thought he was a killer trying to steal his goal. The person replies that he should hurry up because it's a large sum of money. Many bounty hunters will also want to participate. Bubu understands this, but says that there is a very strong fighter near Mimi all the time. The person replies that he will find a way to send someone to help him, but remembers that the target must be eliminated today, otherwise they will not receive the money. Bubu hangs up the call and throws the cell phone in the trash can. Now she feels ready to finally put her plan into action, but as soon as she comes out of the face of the protagonist, some girls start screaming that there is a shameless one in the bathroom.